KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We're joined by entrepreneur, producer of the new PBS special, In Money We Trust. You've seen him on Fox. You've read his magazine for years. Mr. Steve Forbes. Mr. Forbes, welcome.
Good to be with you, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Forbes, you're going to love this one. 24 years ago, a baby talk show host by the name of Kevin Miller interviewed you in New Hampshire. And your campaign back in the day, in 95 and 96, Hope, Growth, and Opportunity, and the flat tax were ahead of its time. And we thank you for joining us, and I always want to thank you for being available and for caring so much about America that you you quit your job, your paying job, and you invest your time, effort, energy, and your family into it. And it's been a long time, so thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And I remember you were in first grade then, right? You were only
it was
precocious child.
It was the wonders of a town called Nashua, New Hampshire, and I know there were so many, but we talk about we long time though, hasn't it been? Yeah,
longer than I like, but anyway. And by the way, even though we haven't gotten a flat tax here yet in the United States, 35 countries around the world have the flat tax now.
Sir, I'm sure you've heard this many times. You were ahead of your time.
Well, thank you, but hopefully we'll get it here in the good old USA.
Sure, and you're still fighting the fight against those Washington politicians. Your thoughts on the state of things? Obviously, you're a money guy, and we are going to talk about this new special, In Money We Trust, on PBS. But the debt, the deficit, at an all-time high. You're a man that's a successful businessman. You cover money. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, the key way, one of the key ways you start to deal with this thing is to get a vibrant, growing economy, which we're now beginning to have for the first time in a generation, thanks to deregulation and tax cuts. And if we get a trade deal, get these trade deals out of the way, which I think we will in the next couple of months, you'll see this economy really come to life. That's one good thing. The other thing that has to be done is a little bit of spending restraint, which I think this president wants to do. And then we have to tackle entitlements. And the way you do it is not by taking things away from people, but by doing things for the future, i.e. with Social Security, get a new system in for younger people. Don't tamper with benefits for those who are on the system or about to go on the system. We can afford those promises. But for younger people is where the problem is, and what we should do is bring in a system in the next few years where a good chunk of their payroll tax goes to their own personal accounts with strict requirements on investment. That way they own it, not the Washington politicians. And that way, even if they just put it in CDs, they'll have more for the retirement than the current system can possibly give them today. So let's do it a positive approach.
No, and Mr. Forbes, we've mentioned that for years. You've championed that for years. What's the giant sticking point in making that happen, sir?
Well, part of it is the demagogues like to say, oh, this will undermine Social Security. It won't, because right now every dollar you send in on your Social Security tax gets spent. The government spends it. There's nothing in that trust fund. So it's all been a shell game, and it's time to call them on it. And then they say that you're going to have to take some benefits someday from somebody. Nonsense again. There's been a lot of studies done on this, and there's no reason why we can't do it for younger people. And the arithmetic works, but politicians don't want to give up power. They love to control things in Washington.
Mr. Forbes, your thoughts on President Trump? Again, he seemed to take a page out of your playbook from back in 1996.
Well, he is trying to drain the swamp and is finding out the swamp is a pretty big place. But they've done a lot on deregulation, and which doesn't get headlines each day. Very unglamorous, nitty-gritty work, but a lot of his appointees are doing a very good job on that. We mentioned the tax cut, not nearly as far as we would like to go, but a good step in the right direction. The thing that is holding things up a bit is these tariffs. Tariff is another word for sales tax, and I think we're going to get that resolved in the next few weeks, couple of months. And we're finally doing, I think, the right thing in terms of China's trade abuses, which are very real, and that is go after specific individuals who are violating the law, specific companies that are violating the law. You know, there's a big Chinese company Donald Trump could have put out of business a couple of months ago by banning them from buying certain parts from certain U.S. companies, and he, in good faith, didn't do it, but you pull the plug on a couple of Chinese companies and a couple of Chinese banks, that gets their attention. And that's one reason why I think the Chinese are now eager to get a deal done. They know now we're finally hitting them where it hurts.
Mr. Forbes, Steve Forbes joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. We urge you to check out his new documentary, new PBS special, In Money We Trust. You're getting a lot of rave reviews from the elite media saying this is must-watch viewing if you want to figure out how money really works.
Yes, and it does so in a very straightforward, simple way. And you can find it on inmoneywetrust.org. You could go right online after your show and watch the thing. It's under an hour. And in a very straightforward way, it makes the point that when money is trustworthy, when money is sound, you can trust it, and the politicians aren't fooling around with it, as the Federal Reserve keeps doing. By golly, humanity prospers, whether it's philosophy coming out of Greece 2,500 years ago, the Renaissance, some of the advances we've made today. So it does so in a way that everyone can understand. And going back to years ago, including our own U.S. back in the 1790s, after the Revolution, when we had a terrible currency, terrible inflation, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton put us on a gold standard, and by golly, when people could trust the dollar, America prospered.
Steve Forbes joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580. What do you make of China? Why were they allowed to get away with so much for so many years?
I think there was sort of a lot of wishful thinking that somehow they would behave themselves, but it was high time that we call them to account on a lot of things in a very vigorous way. They're trying to take over the South China Sea with those man-made islands. We're finally doing patrols there to stop that kind of thing and making clear those are international waters, and dealing with specific abuses. They were kind of ignored in the past, and whatever you think of Donald Trump on this, he's at last calling them to account. I don't think we had to go the tariff route to do it. I think going after those companies and those banks and those individuals is the way to do it, but we're doing it. And, you know, in Asia, a place like South Korea, business executives will tell you behind closed doors they may not always like what we do, but they're saying we're glad the U.S. is standing up to China. It needs to be done.
Steve Forbes joining us here, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. What about the Fed? People are always going back and forth on the Fed. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, with the Fed, the way they operate now, which they think prosperity causes inflation, which is nonsense. We point that out in the movie. There are at least 7 economists have won Nobel Prizes pointing out that view is nonsense. But the thing to watch out for, Kevin, is that as the U.S. economy really starts to take off, it's doing well now after we get these trade agreements done, you're going to hear a word coming out of the Fed. The word is overheating. They think the U.S. economy is like a machine and that it can overheat, which is preposterous, ridiculous. You know, economies are individuals. 300 million in America, 7 billion around the world, and the idea that if we do well, we're going to overheat. I mean, if you get a raise in pay, do you feel your temperature going up? Do you feel you're sweating? Do you need to cool off because you're overheating? It's ridiculous. And so we're going to have to watch out for the Fed because they'll try to slow the economy down, throw people out of work, and stop the prosperity because of this nonsense. So the movie touches on this, and we got to be aware of it. So when you start hearing the Fed start jabbering about overheating, watch out. I think the president will take him to task. He won't hesitate to do it.
And it will be much viewed viewership. Mr. Forbes, you know, Forbes Media, Forbes Magazine, how has your world changed with the entire digital revolution? Everybody still goes to Forbes.com and reads your magazine. Have you guys had to adjust over the years?
Oh, big time. We get over 85% of our revenue is now non-magazine. It's online and other things that we do. And so we've had to make major adjustments, but always remembering what our mission is, which is we profoundly believe in entrepreneurial free markets, entrepreneurial capitalism, as Lincoln put it, giving people the opportunity to improve their lot in life. And but we've now have a vigorous website. We have over 80 million unique visitors a month now, and we have good licensing agreements. So we're moving ahead. But it was an enormous change, especially 8 to 10 years ago. Our world was turned upside down. And it's very easy to say, "Oh, pretend you're a startup and reinvent your company." But when you're a legacy company like we're over 101 years old.
Yeah.
It was very, very difficult to do. We did it, but it's not easy.
No, indeed. A lot of rewiring and reprogramming. Steve Forbes joining us, producer, host of the new PBS special In Money We Trust. A final question for you, sir. The new Green Deal, your thoughts?
I see it in terms of avoiding a government shutdown again, which was starting to affect airports last time. I see the 55 miles that the president's going to get on constructing a wall structure, whatever you want to call it, is a demonstration project. And I think he's going to be able to use that in the next few years and say, here, look at it. It works. We need more of it. Let's trust the border experts on where we need this kind of a structure. So I think ultimately he's going to win on this thing, not as quickly as he would have liked, but nothing would have been done if he hadn't pushed the issue in the first place.
Well, we can't wait to check this out. I'm going to go online and DVR it several times. I really mean that. And like I said, Mr. Forbes, always appreciated you. You have a great sense of humor. Love watching you on Fox and Fox Business, and back to our old days on talk radio in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Wow. You bring back a lot of memories. And thank you, Kevin, for those very, very, very kind words. And can't believe it's 24 years ago.
and this is what a brilliant job you did of branding. I always think of your campaign slogan, hope, growth, and opportunity. So relevant today, sir.
Thank you. Got to look to the future and keep up the good fight.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Our great friend Steve Forbes joining us. Coming up next, we'll talk about whether or not everybody's on board with the president. Your thoughts about the economy as well. Join the show at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Welcome back. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Can't agree with that commercial from keepidaho.org. More stinky, parasitical weed that is marijuana. Thank you very much, Drug Free Idaho, keepidaho.org, for sponsoring this program. We appreciate it and hope you know that we are with you every step of the way. That's been the major topic of conversation. If you miss any of this at one time award-winning program, you can go to KIDOTalkRadio.com and you can listen to it in its entirety. And you can subscribe to our newsletter, our YouTube channel. Lots of great ways to stay in touch. And we do have an article there about an issue that we talked about recently where we're going to give you a demerit if you get caught with up to 3 ounces of marijuana. Or, I'm sorry, an infraction, not a demerit. And usually it's a misdemeanor where you get a grand fine and up to a year in prison. A lot of people say, a year in prison for possessing marijuana? Well, don't blame me. You have an issue with it. Take it up with the legislature. Americans continue to march to low-tax states. Is Idaho one of them? More Californians consider fleeing. Well, I don't know if that's good news or not. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The president wondering whether or not he will sign a bill that he doesn't like, and certainly Sean Hannity doesn't like.
The bottom line is on the wall. We're building the wall, and we're using other methods other than this. And in addition to this, we have a lot of things going. We have a lot of money in this country, and we're using some of that money, a small percentage of that money, to build the wall, which we desperately need. The
devious little libs, remember Nancy Pelosi said no funding for the wall, so they call it a structure. Mr. President, are you happy?
I can tell you that, am I happy at first glance? I just got to see it. The answer is no, I'm not. I'm not happy. But am I happy with where we're going? I'm thrilled.
There we have it. You know, you wonder, with the president's popularity at an all-time high, with the Senate Intelligence Committee acquitting him of any alleged wrongdoing, with Robert Mueller having nothing, the Democrats should be on the run. But where are the congressional Republicans, Sarah Sanders?
It's exactly what we've been saying all along. We're glad that they finally caught up. It's sad. It's hurtful for the country that it's taken 2 years to get there. But we're glad to see that they see what we have been saying all along, that there was absolutely no collusion. And I think it's time for everybody to be able to move on and move forward so we can focus on the big things that Americans actually care about. This certainly isn't one of them.
Oh, Sarah, they don't want to move on. They have nothing to move on to. Would you want to have dinner with Nancy Pelosi? Don in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Don.
Hi, Kevin. Hey, I was listening earlier to your discussion about marijuana. I've got several kids, and when they were younger, they asked me for candy and ice cream all the time. And I would try to explain to them, you know, if you eat too much candy, you'll get sick. If you eat it, it makes you unhealthy. And they would have none of it. They always wanted candy, always wanted ice cream. And somebody, the adult in the room, had to stand up and say, that's not good for you. We're not going to do that. It reminds me of these pro-marijuana folks. They're like little kids. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter the detrimental effects on society. We want our marijuana. Here's the other thing I would say. I've had personal experience with this with very, very close family members. You go spend a day in drug court. You go watch what happens. And it 95% of the time started with something like marijuana that got them into that area where, gosh, marijuana wasn't so bad. Let's try meth. Let's try heroin. Let's try LSD. Let's try ecstasy. You go talk to those judges that see how it rips apart families, how it destroys lives, and see what they're thought of having that wonderful little recreational drug called marijuana become legal in our state.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Don. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And we continue to keep up the good fight against drug legalization and socialism, which are both the same thing. KIDO Talk Radio time, 826, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. Time to get you to work safely and on time.
This is Channel 7's Eric Everett.
Thank you, Larry. Let's go back to the phones and go to Mike in Fruitland. Mike, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, sir.
I'm an old retired guy out here and in my 60s, and sometimes I have a hard time getting up by 9 o'clock. I fall asleep early at night. I don't have the ambition I used to have. So it's been my experience. I don't smoke pot, but it's been my experience over the years that 30-year-olds will act like I do. If they start smoking pot in their 20s and 30s, they lose their ambition. They don't want to start businesses. They lack discipline. They lay around. And if too many of us are doing that, our country is going to fall apart.
Well, the Chinese would love that, and the Russians would love that.
Oh, absolutely, they'd love that. I've traveled all over the world. They love the fact that our society is falling apart. And there's something, I'm not an expert, but there's something about the neurotransmitters in our brains that marijuana has some effect. I'm not saying you're going to die from it or anything, but it's not where we need to go as a society, especially for young people. Especially for young people.
I have never met an ambitious person on pot.
I'm over the hill. If I start smoking pot now, you probably wouldn't notice any difference because I'm older. I don't have the ambition I used to have. But and as far as the laws and the penalties, that's a much more complicated situation. I really don't have an opinion on that, but I really wanted to support you and your audience this morning. There's a lot to this pot smoking with society and where we want to go in the future, and it probably would bring down capitalism in the end.
Well, and they would love that because, you know, you don't work, they're going to give you a check. Who would have ever thought that? And we're all going to be high anyway.
Hang in there, Kevin. I've seen so many examples over the years of what I just told you. It's just I hate to see where we're going in this country. So But anyway, that's all I got to say, and thank you for the fight, and keep it up.
Thank you, Mike. Enjoy the sleep.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to exercise more and act like I'm younger than I really am. And if I don't get better pretty soon,
Yeah.
I might as well start smoking pot. Then I'd have an excuse, right?
Look, acting younger is overrated. Old people rule.
Okay. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. God bless, Mike. Kevin Miller, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
And don't forget, we're getting ready for I can't even remember how many seasons of Promote Our School, Secure Our Future. Brought to you by CapEd Credit Union. We would love to go to your school, hang out, have a great time. How do you do that? Very simply, send me an email like our friends did at a couple schools. I think Vision Charter School was the latest. We've got some folks in Valley View. Basically, we come out, we hang out, we talk to the teachers, the kids, have a great time, promote the school, cover the issues, take the calls, play the music. Well, we don't play the music, but you know what I'm saying. You'll enjoy it. Promote Our School, Secure Our Future. You can email me anytime, kevin@KIDOTalkRadio.com, and we're looking for schools right now, so please check us out there. We also are checking out the president. Will he or won't he sign this deal to end the shutdown before it happens? You've got a lot of folks that are speculating. Even Sarah Sanders earlier this morning on Fox and Friends had this to say concerning the border and the border deal.
He's got alternative options, and he's going to keep those on the table. Again, we'll see what the final package looks like, and the president will make a determination on whether or not he's going to sign it. But you can rest assured the president promised he was going to build the wall, and he's going to deliver.
He is going to deliver. And by the way, how about the Senate Intelligence Committee clearing the president? Clearing the president of any wrongdoing. He's acquitted, right? But you won't hear that on MSNBC. You won't hear that anywhere else in the Treasure Valley. What are you going to hear? Well, we want to make sure that Robert Mueller. Mueller's got nothing. It was all an attempt by the deep state to circumvent the rightfully elected president of the United States of America, Donald John Trump. By the way, who still has an open invitation to come here to the Treasure Valley. It's a new year. We need to make that happen. A lot going on. We've got a lot planned for you when we're taking a look at this. So we hope to get the president here, and we hope to take more of your phone calls. Don't forget Glenn Beck coming up today at 9 o'clock. Joining us now, the modern-day Richard Ben Cramer, and I know I've gone to that too many times with this young man. Jared Halpern joining us from Fox News Radio on Capitol Hill. Good morning, sir.
I just like you calling me a young man. That's welcome news.
Young, vibrant, dynamic. That's you.
Wow. My kindergarten son would disagree with you. But
here we have it, Jared. We've got a path forward to avoid another shutdown. Your thoughts from the scene?
Well, we think we do. Listen, I think that the president has certainly suggested he's on board with this. I've not seen a definitive I will sign it. And, this still needs to work its way through the House and the Senate. We still don't have the full legislative text. So this is going to be something that, they release the text and then vote on it because we are up against it now with that Friday night deadline. But it is certainly a good sign when you have leadership from both parties signaling, or not even signaling, full-throated endorsing this plan, from McConnell to Pelosi, saying that this is the best way forward to prevent a government shutdown. This is a full government funding bill, so not just the DHS border security portion, but 7 appropriations bills included in this. So fully funding the government through the fiscal year, so through September, about $1.3 billion for what are described as border barriers, which is, listen, that's a far cry from the $5.7 billion President Trump had asked for. But, Republican leaders are saying, listen, this is for this fiscal year. This is a down payment. It's not the end of the discussion on wall funding. So that, I think, is something that they're trying to stress to their members. Democrats are stressing that, this is not a wall. This is physical barriers. This is where the Border Patrol wants them. This is, a lot of congressional oversight, and it is not the $5.7 billion that the president asked for. Both of them are claiming victory, both Republicans and Democrats claiming some victory in this ICE detentions bed. Remember, this nearly scuttled the deal over the weekend. Democrats had proposed new caps on not just ICE detention beds, but sort of categorizing what are border arrests and what can be in immigrants that are detained on the interior. So in other words, can you cap the number of immigrants who are detained for like a visa overstay or something like that? Not a crime beyond obviously being in the country illegally. That was sort of how they handled that is this way. So they're not going to categorize the difference. There is a cap of a little bit over 40,000 detention beds that is funded for ICE. So that represents a drop in the number of immigrants currently detained. However, the bill also, we believe, will authorize additional money that that ICE could dip into if they needed it. And if you take all of that money, it would actually exceed the number of detention beds currently authorized. So I think what you see in that is sort of language that allows both parties to walk away with a little bit of a win, and that's obviously what you need to get a bipartisan agreement.
Now more than ever, the reaction yesterday by Senator Burr from the Intel Committee in the Senate saying his committee didn't find any Russian collusion.
Yeah, Senator Burr had said that a couple days ago as well. A couple of things is one, that is not the totality of what the Senate investigators are looking at. They are doing a broader investigation of Russian election interference. Two, they're not done. A final report has not been released, and I've not seen, and usually what you will see in a report like that is sometimes a report from the majority, which would obviously be the Republican side, and then sometimes you may see an addendum from the minority side. But you're right. I mean, I know the president is stressing that Burr, that the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, has said that they have found to this point no direct evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And I expect the president to talk about that a lot as he, particularly if the final Mueller report perhaps finds a different conclusion.
Jared, we always appreciate you, and keep up that vibrant, dynamic youthfulness, sir.
I will try my best.
Thank you, Jared. Take care.
Take care, man.
Our great friend Jared Halpern. Let's go to Aquaman, who joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Aquaman, now that we have you calling in, there could be Spider-Man, Captain America, the Black Panther. Who knows who will call in next, sir?
Well, I mean, as long as they've got something as cool as my trident.
Yeah.
But I've got something even cooler than my trident, and it's Ted Cruz El Chapo Act. And now that El Chapo has been convicted, means there are $14 billion waiting to pay for that wall. I called Ted Cruz's office, and I'm hoping that other people will do the same and keep this ball rolling so that we can use that money instead of taxpayer money to help build that wall. What do you think?
El Chapo didn't look good when he got that conviction. He didn't look like a good El Chapo. He looked like he had lost billions and billions. He's a murderer. He's a scumbag. And Aquaman, I'll get to your point in a minute, but maybe it's my sarcasm or my deadpan or whatever you want to call it. It didn't look like a good day for old El Chapo yesterday.
Well, that bad boy finally needed to be spanked, and I say, who better to finance the wall?
Indeed. I like the idea. Of course, remember, I think that's like out of a Tom Clancy novel, The Clear and Present Danger, where they did seize those assets. And, look, the money's there. We should take it. And, maybe we'll even put El Chapo's section on the wall there for him. Or you know what? We'll have the Al Chapo anti-tunnel area. We'll put a wall like 30 feet down as well to make sure that there's no tunnel, since he was so notorious for the tunneling.
I like it. And if they're going to put a little picture of him I'd like them to go DC style, make it black and white behind bars. Thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Aquaman. Take care, brother.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Kevin Miller Show, the official show of superheroes in the Treasure Valley. Joining us now, our own little man in tights, little buddy Tea Party Bob, Gem State Patriot. Good morning, sir.
What is this little man in tights? Where did you get that from?
I think you'd be kind of scrumptious in tights.
I'd like to see you in a pair of tights.
Ooh,
to be
it'd
very
be a
honest.
big pair of tights there, brother. Big pair of tights.
Well, it looks like there's a lot of gnashing of teeth for the Democrats this morning with the Senate Committee Chairman Barr's declaration that the Senate Committee found no evidence of collusion, and the president's attorney coming out and saying Mueller has no evidence, and they might not even file a report. My question is, if Mueller doesn't file a report, which would disclose anything is found or not found, could it be a clue that they only wanted to do some extensive snooping on Trump's past history to use against him in the 2020 election? Or has Mueller turned over all of his info to the Southern District Court of New York to go after the president? You know, the president didn't get everything he wanted, but he has enough to build 50 miles of wall and access to another $1 billion or so that he could use for further construction with his emergency powers. But with what he's got from the legislature, it will be enough to continue construction of the wall for at least the next year. And we'll see whether he does have to use the emergency powers or does not. The bigger problem, of course, is what your guest was just talking about, is the number of beds for detention of criminals, which is going to be left at the Obama level of around 40,000. You know, the Democrats are going to have to take responsibility for basically saying we don't care how many criminals roam our country. And on this little marijuana forte you've had this morning, I have said time and again that recreational use of marijuana is not a good thing as the gateway drug. And I know that because I lost a nephew because he started using at 17 and went on to more powerful drugs and died at 42. You know, it was a terrible waste of a life. I am, however, in favor of the use of CBD oil. And as Max said, there has been a lot of doubt validity to the tested viability of medicinal purposes for this particular medicine for those suffering from a lot of diseases that current pharmaceuticals don't work on because they have too many side effects. Anyway, that's about all I have to say this morning, Mr. Miller, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Tea Party Bob, thank you, brother.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Coming up next, should the Republicans support the president, and why aren't they? He's at 52% in the poll. This should be a slam dunk. We'll talk about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Look at what's going on in the legislature coming up before Glenn Beck. But first, you know, the president's popularity is at an all-time high. Where is the Republican support, right? You've got the libs running wild, the libs on the run. You've got the libs doing all these crazy lib things. Where's his backup? Shouldn't the president have some backup? You would think. Of course, we go back to, what was it? We had the House and the Senate and the White House for 2 years, and we didn't get a lot accomplished. If you're President Trump, you've got to manage things independently, but where are the congressional Republicans? You know, we know our congressional delegation fully supports the president, but where's everybody else? And by the way, you think it's bad now. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg resigns or retires or whatever, it's going to get a lot worse. Okay, quickly, before we get to traffic and weather and other great things, taking a look here at one of the papers, looking at some of the big issues here. This is an issue that we haven't discussed. It's called HB 120, and I don't even know why people always say these bills. The people that follow them, they are great. They are wonderful. They are outstanding. But I don't know HB 120 from HB 1. By the way, looks like Governor Little will sign HB 1, whatever that is. That's coming up today. How about sign HB and the grocery tax? Could we have somebody do that? And by the way, a few legislators have reached out to us. We're going to have a little talk with them about what we can do about it. It's not over. How about somebody in the vaunted Idaho Press Corps, which is a group of individuals made up of public television and maybe a few newspaper writers. Some of them are very good, and they take their job very seriously, and I get that. With the esteemed Capitol Press Corps, why doesn't somebody go up to these guys again and again and again? Well, Kevin Miller, why don't you do it? Well, our show is about life here in the Treasure Valley. Any legislator is welcome to call in or come in or whatever. But, they work for us. I'd like to know why the grocery tax, people say it's not going to happen. I'd like an answer to that. By the way, our latest Inspire Excellence podcast, produced by Tommy Ahlquist and BVA Development, we asked that question to Speaker Moyle and Minority Leader Erpelding, and they tell the truth. That's available on any place you can get the podcast. So here's one of my favorite bills, sex education. By the way, is there not a more uncomfortable class for kids in school? Sex education. Parents who want their children to take a sex ed class or participate in a class with an instruction or presentation regarding sexuality must file a written permission notice with the school district board of trustees. What does that mean? Are they going to eliminate sex ed? And unfortunately, do most people get that off the internet anyway, or watching a rap video? I hope not. Thank goodness we have this legislator from East Idaho making this commitment. I'm sure people will ridicule and make fun of it, but parents love their kids, want the best for their kids, the good parents. There are a lot of bad parents. And they want their kids to, they want to have a say in education. And I don't know which is more helpless, when you go to work and they say this is how it's going to be, or when you go to school and you have no input as a parent, even though you're paying to fund the school. Think about that for a minute. KIDO Talk Radio time, 8:55. KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave.
Investor Pro.
And thank you very much, Larry, for that weather report. Be very careful. Here's another no-brainer that if we need help to get behind, Marsy's Law, which would amend Idaho's existing crime victims' rights via a constitutional amendment, adding requirements that mandate victims be notified of court proceedings, have a voice in those proceedings, and several other requirements. What is it, SJR 1, which was introduced at the first of the month, okayed by a Senate committee, awaits the Senate floor vote. This is another issue that we'll look at, Marsy's Law, to make sure that victims are taken care of. How many times, rightfully or wrongfully so, we talk about the incarceration rates. We talk about the people that, when they get out of prison, they've got to be rehabilitated. We've got to make sure that they're okay. We've got to do the right thing. What about the victims? You ever looked into the eyes of a victim? You ever look into somebody's eyes that have been, beaten up, robbed, or worse? For me, it was going one-on-one with Fred Goldman. Yep, that Fred Goldman, about 2 or 3 years after the O.J. Simpson case, working on a similar bill in a similar state, trying very hard to get victims their rights. We have rights for just about everybody but victims. You don't have to talk to law enforcement, be in law enforcement, to understand a need to protect victims. And one of the things that we vow is always to protect the values of the Gem State. Whether we agree or disagree on a variety of issues, it sure makes it a fun way to wake up in the morning. It is so special to be a small part of it with you. We appreciate you listening. We understand you got a lot of choices, and we treat every choice as the most important one of the day. So we'll try harder to do a better show tomorrow, as we do each and every day. Want to thank Ray Amaya for doing a great job. But think about that. This is a chance to change things. It's not just a slogan, standing up for what's waking up on the right side. It's making a difference and letting those people know that you're not alone, that we're not alone, and no matter what the crazy, wacky, zany folks in the media say, there's more of us than there are of you, of them. God bless. Keep the faith. Glenn Beck's next. KIDO Talk Radio.